A 29-year-old chef from Harbor Springs died over the weekend from a rare fungal disease that ravaged his lungs, according to his family. Ian Pritchard was being treated for blastomycosis, which the CDC says is caused by inhaling a fungus that lives in moist soil and decomposing wood and leaves.
He got sick shortly before Thanksgiving, and after months of not responding to the treatment, he asked to be taken off life support. We talked with his father today, one day before what would have been Ian's 30th birthday.
We both held his hands, and he was pretty well bald. So we held his hands and rubbed his head. And he had a thing where when he was a baby, if I rubbed between his eyes, he would go right to sleep when he was a baby, and it worked every time. And I did a little bit of that, and I asked him if he remembered that. And he said yes. And, we told him that we loved him and that we were proud of him. And we didn't want to see him go, but if that's what he wanted, we'd see him on the other side.
Oh man, that is heartbreaking. Health experts say these infections are rare. Most people who breathe in those spores don't get sick. However, some develop flu-like symptoms. Arnold Pritchard says that they are planning a celebration of life. And joining us now is Leah Monday, an infectious disease expert and doctor at the Detroit Medical Center and assistant professor of medicine at Wayne State University. She's also a specialist at Carano's Cancer Institute, which treats cancer patients for infections. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So this is a very heartbreaking, devastating story. How rare is this? And also, how did we end up in this situation for this young man?
So, this is an exceedingly tragic and rare case. For an immunologically normal 29-year-old healthy adult to contract this and then get so ill and die from it is very, very unusual. And certainly a very tragic case that this young man succumbed to this illness.
Now, we mentioned it can be in decomposing wood and leaves and the soil, so that is even more terrifying. If it sounds like just going outside, you can potentially contract it. But tell us about that process, just contracting it, and would there be any effect for most people?
Right, so this is what we call one of the endemic mycoses, meaning it's sort of native to the Midwest, the South Central U.S., especially the Great Lakes region around freshwater lakes and rivers. So in particular, Michigan, people can get this. And like you said, most people would breathe in spores. They would never get ill. Even if they did get sick, they might have a self-limited flu-like illness like a cough or fever. And it would be very, very rare for someone to have lung disease that was so invasive. And then in rare cases, it can also sort of what we call disseminate or go into the skin or the brain. And normally when that happens, the person has something wrong with their immune system, such as cancer or HIV, or perhaps they're on a medication that might suppress their immune system for something like Crohn's disease or rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune medication. And those are the people who would be most at risk of having a really bad outcome like this. So in this case, I'm not quite sure why this healthy young man had such a severe situation happen.
So knowing that underlying health conditions are a factor, this isn't necessarily something that the general public needs to be extremely concerned about?
I think that's a really good question. I think, for the general public, it sounds terrifying that, oh my gosh, this is in the wood behind my house. But people that are on chemo, people that are on certain medications, they should tell their doctor if they like to dig in soil or hike and go out in nature a lot. They should let their doctor know. In particular, for example, on the cancer unit where we do bone marrow transplants, you're not allowed to bring in fresh flowers or fresh plants for this exact reason, because they can harbor mold or yeast in the environment. And I think for a lot of people, it would be if you have a compromised immune system and you are getting sick with something in your lungs or a cough and not getting better in antibiotics, to just make sure that someone thinks about this.
And is there any reason to avoid, I don't want to say just being outside, but it sounds like heavily wooded areas, hiking. Is there any reason to take precautions like that?
I thought about you asking me this question a lot, because I love to go hike, especially up north and in Petoskey, in the area where he was from. And my chances as someone with a normal immune system going up there hiking, being exposed and having this happen it's much more likely that I would get in a car accident on the way than have this happen, you know? So I think we don't want to fearmonger. We don't want people not hiking and getting out and having activity, but we should be cognizant, people on chemo, people on these immunosuppressive medications, to be aware of the risk of especially soil and excavation exposure, and to just make sure they let their doctor know if they're having a cough and bad symptoms. In the case for Ian, I really don't know how this could have sort of been avoided.
Yeah, Dr. Monday, for the people that you just listed, are there some preventative measures that they can maybe put in place just in case, just to be careful?
Yeah, so you know, people who are undergoing bone marrow transplant or certain chemotherapy get regularly put on medicine to protect them from molds. And then other people, they choose to avoid things like gardening or hiking, or even people that are working construction jobs during times of suppression treatment for their medication, they will avoid going to work for those times and get a doctor's note to protect them from exposure.
All right, well, thanks so much for being here with us. It is a little reassuring to know all of this, and that car accident metaphor, I think, especially, is pretty helpful.
Thank you.
We don't want to fearmonger, of course. Professor Leah Monday, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.